If you watch enough baseball players, you'll soon realize they are obsessed with sticky things. It's not just pine tar. Players have used rosin, resin, motor oil, creosote, and literal cow and horse poop. It's everywhere. It's on their bats, it's in their hair, it's on their jersey. Yogi Berra used it as deodorant. Players have been creatively utilizing sticky products for over a century for reasons that go way beyond just getting a good grip. Here's Bryce Harper spraying something sticky on his barrel. That's illegal based on a series of rules surrounding sticky substances that have had players completely lose their shit for over 100 years. Sticky stuff in MLB has evolved so many times, they've had to change the rules surrounding it at least 9 times in the past century. Players and teams have contracted literal scientists to create the stickiest substances possible, creating a sticky substance arm race that got MLB employees fired and the league sued. There's lizard grips, Moda sticks, tiger sticks, tough skin, bat wax, firm grip, literal beeswax, a product called Bullfrog sunscreen, and a combination of all these things is caked on bats, belts, hats, and helmets across the league. Also, this doesn't happen. Trot Nixon loses control of his bat and throws it near the pitcher, which is ironic because here's Trot Nixon's hat and here's his helmet, both with a ton of sticky residue. He had no defense. He blatantly threw his bat at the pitcher on purpose after he hit 2 of his teammates earlier in the game. Obviously, this was on purpose. But the point is, flying bats are dangerous. Players losing their grip and letting bats fly into the field and stands isn't good. That's why grip is important. It's the most obvious and common reason for sticky substances in baseball, and the most common and obvious way to achieve that is pine tar. Produced by carbonizing pine wood at extremely high temperatures. The first evidence of its production occurred in the Nordic Iron Age. Vikings lathered their longboats with it and raided lands as far as Russia, North Africa, and Italy, eventually spreading pine tar to ancient Greece, where Hippocrates first wrote about its medicinal use over 2,000 years ago. As the shipbuilding industry exploded, thousands were crossing the Atlantic to the New World. The demand for pine tar was higher than ever, and Great Britain's new colony had millions of acres of pine. Before long, 4/5 of the tar in England was produced in America. The country expands deeper and deeper into the Appalachian Mountains, where millions of untouched pine turn states like North Carolina into the biggest pine tar producers in the world. So much so that when a civil war breaks out, the soldiers from North Carolina call themselves Tar Heels. By war's end, America may be the top pine tar producer in the world, and baseball emerges as the #1 sport in the country. So you'd think that one of these geniuses would put the two together, realize that pine tar makes swinging a bat easier, throwing a ball much easier, but nope. The first mention of pine tar in anything baseball related that we found comes close to 100 years later. Now there's 100 different forms of it. There's liquid pine tar that is spread on a rag, then on a bat. There's also stick pine tar, which is harder to spread. That evolved into a synthetic type of pine tar called the Moda stick. The story goes, Manny Moda saw a mechanic use a stick like this on a car, thought it would be good for a bat, so he got some for his bat. Years later, players across the league started using this on their bat. Firm grip is a similar substance used. Back in the day, before all of this, Stan Musial used beeswax to get a better grip. The logic behind these things is that you can hold the bat less tight and get the same amount of grip, allowing the hitter to have a more relaxed grip while maintaining the same leverage. But pine tar is used for other things too. Howard Johnson and others used to cover their barrels with pine tar, sand it down, or put a bat weight over it, then slam it until the pine tar filled in all the grain, supposedly making the bat rounder and harder. Pete Rose used to soak his bat in motor oil, thinking that it made his bat harder, and Frankie Frisch used to bury his bat in animal poop. When he took it out, he thought they were harder and would last longer. It's debatable whether any of that is legal, but this is probably not. Bryce Harper is spraying something on his barrel. The implication is that it's something like tough skin. This has become a pine tar replacement, prevalent around the league. You'll see players like Shohei Ohtani sprayed on his bat before every at-bat. Dustin Pedroia had his hand slip off his bat and had to go on the disabled list with a thumb injury. He drenched his bat with this stuff ever since. Its original use was to get tape to stick to skin easier. It's essentially a sticky spray. It's what many people believe was on Yadier Molina's chest protector when this happened. Catchers have been known to put sticky substance on their gear, dip their fingers in it, so when they make throws to second base, they can get a better grip and be more accurate. There's no rule against that. In the old days, catchers might put something slippery or sticky on their gear, so when they catch the ball, they can rub it on their gear, throw it back to the pitcher, who now has a ball covered in illegal foreign substance. Catcher Elston Howard used to sharpen the buckles on his shin guards and gouge the ball with them as he threw them back to the pitcher. This scuffed up the ball, and the pitcher now had a lot more movement. This is way less likely to happen now, as balls are constantly being switched out. Some speculate the sticky stuff on Molina's chest protector was used to help him block pitches in the dirt and lessen the likelihood they'd bounce far away, but that might be a stretch. MLB investigated and found that Molina broke 0 rules on this play, but spraying the same thing on your bat barrel would be illegal. In the old days, players used to rub their bat with slippery substances, so when they made contact, the ball would become slippery and the fielders would make more errors. But putting sticky stuff on your bat, there's really no advantage to doing that, and who knows what specific substance Harper is actually using here. However, he has gotten in trouble for it before. His rookie year, Ozzie Guillen called him out for having too much pine tar on his barrel. The umpire made Harper get a new bat, and Harper pointed at Guillen to show him. Guillen lost his shit over this, left the dugout, and screamed at him some more. After the game, Harper's teammates covered a bat completely in pine tar and had Harper sign it, quote, "For my hero Ozzie," and gifted it to Ozzie Guillen after the game. According to the rules, you're not allowed to have any pine tar 18 inches from the handle of the bat. However, it's not like there's any actual competitive advantage to doing it. In fact, the reason this is a rule in the first place was because an owner in the 70s was upset that his team had to spend so much money on baseballs. He wanted to use less baseballs a game. When pine tar got on a ball, it had to be replaced. So he convinced the league to make a rule that disallowed pine tar above 18 inches from the handle, just because it would save teams money on balls. And it ended up leading to one of the most notorious ejections of all time. In 1983, George Brett hit a go-ahead home run against the Yankees in the top of the 9th inning. The Yankees then go to the umpire and point out that George had too much pine tar on his bat. The umpire measured the pine tar, declared it was over 18 inches from the handle, reversed the home run call, called him out, and the game ended. George Brett completely lost it, and so did the entire country. Nobody on earth knew this was a rule until this moment. The Royals eventually appealed. MLB came to their senses and realized this rule was dumb, concluded that instead of reversing the home run and ejecting Brett, the umpire should have just made him use a different bat. They reversed the decision, the home run now counts, and the two teams will now play the final inning. The Yankees were so pissed that they protested this game by putting a starting pitcher to play center field, putting a left-handed player in the infield, then appealed to the first base umpire, arguing that George Brett did not touch first base on the home run he hit a month ago. The logic being that these umpires weren't even the umpires at the original game, so it would be impossible for them to know for sure that Brett touched first base. No call could be made, and the game would have to be canceled. Predictably, the umps called him safe, and he lost his shit again. The game was played under protest for the second time. The Yankees could not score and lost 25 days after the game started. This was such a big deal at the time that George Brett, a 13-time All-Star, MVP, and a Hall of Famer, is mostly known to this day for this one moment, which she says is a good thing because before this, he was mostly known as the guy who almost had to miss a World Series game because he needed hemorrhoid surgery. But this game also helped put pine tar back into America's consciousness. The substance wasn't as prevalent at the time as you may think it was. In fact, it may have not ever even been used in baseball baseball until a few decades prior. And before that, it was essentially a snake oil product. It was sold as a cough medicine. Companies sold pine water that was supposed to cure tuberculosis. Pine tar honey was marketed to cure backaches, kidney, and bladder troubles. They mixed it with coal tar and castor oil and sold it to women to help with scalp troubles for only 2 cents. Unfortunately for pine tar users, the FDA banned it as an over-the-counter medicine in 1990 because there was, quote, no proof the ingredients work. Yes, if you had tuberculosis, you used to have to go to Morristown Republic and order pine tar honey from the newspaper. But here's the thing. Back then, people didn't have a choice. Today, we do have a choice. We just don't always use it. We put off appointments, ignore symptoms, and hope things get better on their own. But your health isn't something to gamble with because no one else is going to take care of it for you. Luckily, doctors have come a long way, and finding a doctor is easier than ever thanks to today's sponsor, ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free website where you can compare high-quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to instantly book an appointment. Need some help with back pain from sitting at a desk all day? ZocDoc can help. Need a dentist? Doc can cover you. Anything from eye care to skin care, even mental health, ZocDoc can help you find the best doctor in your area or even help you set up an online consultation out of area. As we all know, baseball is more dangerous than ever, making resources like ZocDoc more important than ever. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance. I pulled my hamstring playing slow pitch softball last summer. Finding a doctor who took my insurance took forever. I wish I had ZocDoc, but now I do. You can filter for doctors to take your insurance who are located nearby, who are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and also can see who are the highest rated doctors by verified patients. You can avoid months waiting for an appointment because ZocDoc check doctors' actual availability and typically can get you an appointment within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. You can even score same-day appointments. You don't have to talk to anyone, just book with a few clicks. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/baseball doesn't exist. Also, there is a link below in the description to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. Thanks again to ZocDoc for sponsoring. Before pine tar, there was other substances baseball players used, and perhaps the first ever grip enhancer in baseball history was mud, and it just so happens to be the same exact mud used today. Every single baseball is rubbed with a layer of mud before it's used in an MLB game. This is to get the shine off the ball and add a subtle grittiness to make it easier to grip. A brand new ball tends to be slick. In the old days, umpires would spit tobacco juice on the balls to give pitchers better grip until a guy named Lena Blackburne brought a bucket of mud from his home and started rubbing mud on all his team's balls. The league realized this was a better solution and contracted Lena Blackburne to collect mud from his hometown to rub on each and every baseball. Over 80 years later, the original mud collector's descendants collect this same mud to be rubbed on every single Major League Baseball used in-game. Each year, 4 or 5 people go to a secret river and collect this mud. They add a secret ingredient to it that no one is allowed to know. And these 4 or 5 people are supposedly the only people on Earth who know where this mud comes from. The mud is supposedly on public land, so if anyone found out, they could collect the mud for themselves and the family business would be over. In fact, MLB has been looking to kill this family business for years, wanting to switch to something that is more consistent and reliable than mud from a secret river. But scientists recently studied this mud and it left them in awe, stating it contains the perfect proportion of sticky clay and particles of sand, so it spreads like face cream but grips like sandpaper. The scientists state that the combination is so rare, unique, and effective that, quote, any attempt to create a synthetic substance to replace this mud would be foolish. Lena Blackburne's mud from the 30s was one of the first so-called sticky substances. Before that, slippery substances were way more popular. This was the era of the spitter, a pitch that is thrown with the use of a slippery substance that creates less grip, an unnatural spin, and crazy movement. Pitchers use products like slippery elm bark. These are essentially wood chips pitchers would chew throughout the game to keep producing saliva that was the perfect consistency for a good spitter. Some players would keep chewing and recycling licorice in their mouth to get the same effect. Other substances used were tiger marrow fat and something called benzoin. It is a balsamic resin obtained from trees that supposedly toughens hands and prevents blisters. The modern method used to achieve this, ironically, is a lot more old-fashioned. Jorge Posada would literally pee on his hands to make them tougher, and he wasn't the only one. Guys like Posada, Moises Alou, and Vladimir Guerrero all elected to wear no batting gloves, taking hundreds of thousands of swings a season. This is a death sentence for your hands. To combat this, they would keep them as hard as possible. Vladimir Guerrero would tape his fingers and lather everything he owned in pine tar, as well as soak his hands in urine to make them harder. According to his teammates, the entire team avoided high-fiving him because his hands were as hard as rock and also covered in piss, which is even worse than the early days when pitchers regularly covered the ball in tobacco juice, saliva, and dirt to make it harder to see. That was not against the rules, totally legal. But did you know at one point this was illegal? Yes, rosin, the most unassuming substance ever, was at one point looked at as an illegal sticky substance. So much so that the American and National League went to war over rosin bags. It's a heated liquid resin collected from pine trees, separated into turpentine and strained and wadded, then purified. It's essentially pine tar turned into chalk. Every pitcher in the league uses this now. Sometimes they use it so much, they go to grab it and it literally explodes on the mound. AJ Burnett famously destroyed 2 rosin bags in one season. Most pitchers rely on this heavily. It basically just dries your hands of sweat and your bald head if you're Tim Hudson. The rosin bag is so sought after, a fan once rushed the field and stole one from the mound in the middle of a game. It isn't just for pitchers. Adding rosin to pine tar activates the stickiness and creates a slightly different feel that some batters like. A-Rod, for example, used to lather his entire body in it before batting, and it's completely legal as long as you don't put it directly on the ball, the glove, or any part of the uniform. That's a rule because when rosin is combined with sweat, it becomes very sticky. Pitchers will combine the two, create a sticky substance on their body, put it on their fingers, which creates more friction and allows them to spin the ball more. You will occasionally see pitchers pat down their sweating forearms, creating a paste-like substance. Pitchers have also been known to lather themselves with a brand of sunscreen called Bullfrog. This contains some ingredient that for some reason reacts extremely well with rosin and makes an even stickier substance. Their logic is rosin's legal, sunscreen's legal, so umpires can't tell me I can't do this. Which is untrue because excessive amounts of rosin and mixing it to make it even stickier is forbidden. You'll even see some pitchers dose themselves with water before going into a game. A lot of times this is because now they don't need to sweat to combine the rosin. They're already wet enough. Combining rosin and alcohol makes an even stickier substance, as demonstrated on ESPN. In a game 2 years ago, Max Scherzer learned this the hard way. He was checked after an inning. The umpire found something sticky and told him he had to wash his hands. He did. Came back out. The umpire found that his glove was still sticky, so he made him get a new glove. When he came out after that, the third time, the umpire felt his hand again and said it was the stickiest hand he ever felt since MLB started making umpires feel players' hands. Scherzer got ejected and lost it after the game, saying,
"He said my hand's too sticky," and I said, "I swear on my kid's life, I'm not using anything else. This is sweat and rosin."
But then also saying that he had washed his hands with alcohol in the clubhouse, and whether it was on purpose or not, that explains the stickiness. There's 2 types of rosin, powder rosin and rock rosin. This is what rosin usually looks like. It's basically rock. Clubhouse managers would put these into socks, tie them up, then throw them around and crush them up enough so that when it was touched, powder would come out. For years, MLB didn't even regulate what rosin you could use. Teams sourced their rosin and made their rosin bags in different ways. Some teams gained a reputation for having the best rosin, and players from different teams would go to that team's equipment managers and buy it from them so they could use the rosin themselves. Until 2022, when MLB stated only one company could supply the rosin. They hired a company called Pelican Grip, which at the time was literally a part-time bartender who made rosin and pine tree products with his dog in a garage. Now, in order to keep the rosin uniform, he is the only person allowed to make the rosin bags used in MLB games. There's 2 versions, a rock version and a powder version, and each rosin bag is placed in another bag to limit how much rosin can come out of the bag, because excessive rosin is technically illegal. In fact, all rosin used to be illegal. It was the era of freak pitches like shine balls and emery balls. They'd put so much mud and dirt on a ball so the batter couldn't see it, and it was basically completely allowed. Pitchers would spit tobacco juice, rub dirt and mud on the ball to make it darker so hitters couldn't see it. And umpires, by the way, wouldn't stop them from doing this. Some teams even admitted to freezing balls. Storing balls in the freezer, then thawing them out before the game would make them heavier and not go as far. One manager said their team had to scrape the mildew off the balls before the games because they were freezing them so long. Teams used to use mud balls, a process where a pitcher would bring out a ton of soap and water to the mound and sabotage the other team by drenching the dirt. So when the other team's pitcher would go to the mound and try to put dirt on their hands, they would just cover their hands in mud. Pitchers like Christy Mathewson started bringing their own rosin in their back pocket in order to dry their hands of this mud. Eventually, this got way out of hand, so in 1919, MLB had their first foreign substance crackdown, banning the use of all freak pitches, and rosin fell under this distinction. Offense then went off the charts, pitchers complained, and a batter got hit in the face and died. So MLB started letting players use rosin to help pitchers. But for years, the American League still viewed this as cheating. They refused to let their pitchers use it, even though MLB put rosin bags on the mound. The American League threatened to fine their players if they actually used the rosin bags. In the World Series, the National League team would have a rosin bag on the mound, and the American League team would not. It wouldn't be for 5 more years until the American League actually began allowing rosin. And by this time, a new sticky substance was right around the corner. In what we believe to be the first pine tar ejection in the history of baseball, in 1948, an Oakland Oaks pitcher was called out by the opposing manager for having pine tar all over his glove. The ump found pine tar and took his glove. He got the last 3 outs of the game with a new glove, and the game ended. For the rest of this guy's life, he was referred to as Ralph Pine Tar Baby Buxton. The commissioner of the league, whose nickname was Pants, decided that based on the rules, Pine Tar Baby should have been ejected, meaning he shouldn't have pitched the last 3 outs, and they'd have to replay the last inning of the game. When the game resumed months later, a fan rushed on the field, painted the words Pine Tar on a suitcase, and put it on the mound. Ralph Pine Tar Baby Buxton could not shake the reputation. The next year, a manager suspected him of using it again. The umpire came out and got on his knees, sniffed Pine Tar Baby's pants, and concluded he did not smell pine tar, and the game continued. Today, sticky substance checks are done by feeling for substances. Originally, it was done by umpires literally smelling a player to see if they smelled like pine tar. Ralph Pine Tar Baby Buxton spent most of his career in the Pacific Coast League, but at 38, he played 1 season for the New York Yankees, where according to him, the first question his manager asked was, quote, "Did you bring your pine tar?" And by the end of the season, the entire Yankees pitching staff was using pine tar. And within 2 years, according to writers at the time, umpires were sniffing pitchers' fingers on a regular occurrence. The thinking at the time was that a substance like pine tar on the ball would add weight, throw off the ball's equilibrium, and allow it to move in unpredictable ways, which is interesting because that is nowhere close to the reason MLB pitchers use pine tar today. For decades, pitchers used it mostly for grip. It was illegal, but nobody ever enforced it. Batters knew pitchers were doing it, never really cared, and unless it was blatantly obvious, nobody got in trouble for it. Until the 2020s, pitchers across baseball started chasing something called spin rate. As technology advanced, pitchers were able to measure how much their balls were spinning. They found that adding a sticky substance made their pitches spin a lot more, and the stickier it was, the more it would spin. No longer were pitchers just trying to get away with pine tar for a little bit of extra grip. They were looking for the stickiest substances possible. Reports came out that players and teams were contracting scientists to create the stickiest stuff they could come up with. A team equipment manager was even fired for doing this. He had been creating his own homemade sticky substance, a combination of rosin, pine tar, and a Moda stick. He gained a reputation of having the best grip enhancer around and says he sold it to some of the league's best pitchers like Garrett Cole, Justin Verlander, Corey Kluber, and Max Scherzer. But one day, he was fired by the Angels. He and others believe he was being used as a scapegoat for MLB because he had been doing this for years, and now all of a sudden it was a problem. A study found that batters hit .304 against pitches with a 2,100 RPM spin rate or lower. On pitches above 2,600 RPMs, they only hit 197. And other studies find that a sticky substance can add 200 to 300 RPM on a fastball instantly. So once pitchers became aware of this, everyone was trying to find the stickiest stuff possible, which culminated in a substance called spider tack, essentially the final boss of sticky substances. Originally, it was created for strong men carrying stones. This stuff is sticky enough for a cinder block to stick to your hand. From 2015 to 2021, the amount of 2,400 RPM fastballs doubled as batting average went to all-time lows and strikeouts went to all-time highs. Pitchers were sticking this stuff in their gloves, putting it on their fingers, and spinning pitches faster than ever. So 103 years after the original foreign substance crackdown of 1919, MLB did it again, implementing foreign substance checks. Now pitchers are regularly patted down. We've seen freakouts, players strip on the field, and some ejections, and spider tack has been eliminated from baseball. However, sticky substances in general are here to stay because there's nothing baseball players love more than getting a good grip and cheating a little bit.